All right, let's talk about equality. It's a huge word, right? We hear it all the time, and it's a value that I think most of us hold pretty dear. But have you ever really stopped to think about what it actually means? It sounds so simple on the surface, but figuring out how to create a genuinely equal society, well, that's one of the oldest and toughest puzzles in history. So today, let's give it a shot.
And that really gets us to the heart of it all. What does it truly mean to be fair? Is it just about treating every single person the exact same way? Or is real fairness something much deeper, maybe a lot more complicated than that? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together. Okay, so the first thing to get our heads around is that equality isn't just one idea. It really has two different faces. The first part is pretty easy. It's called foundational equality. It's the core belief that every single person, no matter who they are, is born with equal moral worth. Most of us can get on board with that. But, and this is a big but, the real argument where all the fireworks happen is with the second part, distributive equality. In other words, how do we fairly divide up all the stuff? The money, the opportunities, the jobs? That's where it gets messy. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack what we actually mean by equality. Then we'll dive into a huge philosophical debate within liberalism. What's more important, equal resources or equal capabilities? After that, we'll look at a totally different way of thinking about this whole thing, the communitarian alternative. And finally, we'll connect all these dots to two other massive ideas, liberty and justice. Let's get into it. All right, Section 1, what is equality? Like we just said, the real challenge isn't debating if we're all born with equal worth. The tough part, the real puzzle, is figuring out how to make society fair in practice. So let's dig in. So now let's see how this whole debate plays out inside the liberal tradition, which, is a way of thinking that really puts the focus on individual rights and freedom. And right in the middle of it, there's this huge argument about how to treat people fairly. And it's perfectly captured by two incredible thinkers who came up with two very different answers.
In one corner, you've got Ronald Dworkin and his big idea, equality of resources. It's a really powerful concept in its simplicity. He basically says, look, fairness is achieved when you give everybody an equal pile of resources right at the start. Think of it like a game where every player begins with the exact same amount of money. What they do with it from that point on, well, that's up to them. But the starting line is identical for everyone. But then, another philosopher, Amartya Sen, comes along and challenges this. He puts forward his own idea, equality of capabilities. For Sen, giving everyone the same starting cash just isn't enough. I mean, what if some people don't know the rules of the game? Or what if someone is physically unable to play as well as others? Sen argues that true fairness isn't about the resources you start with, it's about making sure everyone has the actual ability, the capability, to really play the game and chase the goals that they value in life. So let's just put these two side by side to make it crystal clear. Dworkin's focus is on our initial holdings, the stuff we get at the beginning. His goal is a fair starting point, period. Sen, on the other hand, is focused on our potential achievements, what we can actually do and be. His goal is to create genuine opportunity. It really boils down to this fundamental question. Is fairness about everyone having the same tools, or is it about making sure everyone is truly able to use those tools? And believe me, this isn't just some abstract debate for a classroom. This stuff has massive, real-world consequences. Just think about a policy like affirmative action. How you view it probably depends on which of these ideas you lean towards. Is it a tool to redistribute resources and create a fairer starting line, kind of like Dworkin would argue? Or is it about building the capabilities of groups who've been historically disadvantaged, giving them a genuine shot at success, which is more in line with Sen? You see, the philosophy directly shapes the policies that affect all of us. But wait, what if this entire focus on the individual is missing the bigger picture? This brings us to a completely different way of thinking, the communitarian alternative. These thinkers basically look at that whole Dworkin versus Sen debate and say, you're all asking the wrong question. Their main idea is something called complex equality. And what they argue is that you can't have one single rule for justice, because society isn't just one big pile of money. It's made up of all these different spheres, like healthcare, education, political power. And their point is that each and every one of these spheres should have its own separate rules for what counts as fair. So the key takeaway here is that different goods should be shared for different reasons. Just because you're a successful entrepreneur, that shouldn't automatically buy you the best healthcare or more political influence. The goal isn't to make everyone have the same stuff. It's to prevent dominance, where being rich in one area, like business, allows you to unfairly control all the other areas of life. And who decides what's fair in each sphere? Well, that's up to the community and its shared values.
So, where does that leave us? How does all of this connect? Well, this whole conversation about equality, it doesn't happen in a bubble. It is fundamentally tangled up with two other gigantic ideas that shape our world: liberty and justice.
I like to think of them as an unbreakable triangle. You've got liberty, that's your freedom to choose your own path in life. But really, what good is that freedom without equality, a fair shot at actually pursuing that path? And then there's justice. That's the whole system that tries to balance those two. You can't pull on one without moving the other two. You really can't have one without the others.
And this relationship, it's not just some interesting side note. It is the absolute foundation of political philosophy. How any society chooses to define and balance these three concepts, liberty, equality, and justice, that choice determines almost everything about how that society functions. And so, that brings us right back to where we started, but with a much sharper question. If a society has to choose, what is true fairness? Is it giving everyone the exact same starting line? Or is it ensuring that everyone has the genuine ability to run the race, no matter where they began? There's no easy answer, and it's a question that truly defines the world we live in.